On behalf of our center and our partners, the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our audience here in New York, as well as our larger virtual audience participating online today. The Event 201 scenario is fictional. Today's scenario is going to simulate meetings of a multi-stakeholder group called the Pandemic Emergency Board.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
There's been some conspiracy theories that are around about the potential that pharmaceutical companies or the UN have released this for their own benefit.
And maybe this is a time for us to showcase some cases where we are able to bring forward some bad actors and leave it before the courts to decide whether they have actually spread some fake news.
A new coronavirus. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia.
In related news, a significant demand for personal protective equipment like N95 masks and gloves are on the rise. Patients are overwhelming healthcare facilities. People are avoiding public spaces out of fear of infection and in compliance with public health recommendations. Our U.S. affiliate has just released polling results on public expectations for a vaccine. And 65% of those polled are eager to take the vaccine, even if it's experimental.
I am not optimistic about having a vaccine in time to be relevant during this pandemic.
With enough money and political will, anything is possible.
Penalties have been put in place for spreading harmful falsehoods, including arrests.
If the solution means controlling and reducing access to information, I think it's the right choice.
What exactly are the risks and benefits of staying home from work? Absolutely, we need to save lives, but we literally cannot afford a heavy-handed response that suffocates our economy.
The world saw large-scale protests and in some places riots. This led to violent crackdowns in some countries and even martial law. The public lost trust in their respective administration. Economists say the economic turmoil caused by such a pandemic will last for years. The societal impacts, the loss of faith in government, the distrust of news, and the breakdown of social cohesion could last even longer. We have to ask, did this need to be so bad?
Did you just see a simulation of a pandemic and big tech and big government and big science and big pharma and big controllers all in on it together, globally, planning it out step by step, and people think that this is a coincidence? I mean, come on, you've got to have, potatoes for brains to not notice the obvious connection here. It's kind of like 911, the training exercise, right? There was a training exercise. NORAD was busy. They were hunting terrorists in Fantasyland, but what happened? 2 buildings came down and so-called airplanes smashed into them. And then several other airplanes crashed down. And what was NORAD doing? Is this real world? Is it real world? Is it not real world? Or is it simulation? Is it training? Huh? And what about Boston bombing? What were they doing a few blocks over? Practicing the very same attack response. I mean, come on. And there are many, many other examples of this sort of coincidence. Is it a coincidence? Now, that video that you just saw is from Plandemic, Part 2, featuring Dr. Judy Mikovits. There's a story behind Dr. Judy Mikovits with me. I put on one of her first whistleblower videos on my Jason Bainbridge DNA Bankers YouTube channel. Garnered 35,000, more than 35,000 actually by the time YouTube took it down, censoring me and slashed my view count. That thing pushed my subscribership up to about 400. I was wallowing on like 48 subscribers. Big tech, what is wrong with you? And people, why aren't you connecting the dots? Simulations suddenly turn into reality? I mean, what's the coincidence? What on earth is happening there at the border of Texas and Mexico? I tell you, There's some serious human trafficking going on down there. Now, I ain't no politician, I tell you that much. And I'm certainly not a scientist. But I tell you something, if you're not looking after your border, you got those Mexican gangs running all the human trafficking. What's happening to these kids down there? I mean, it's crazy. Why doesn't this president, if he calls himself a president, why doesn't he go down there and do something about it? Instead of that laughing hyena, Kamala Harris. Whatever she doesn't do much. All she does is giggle, 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 giggle. I'm not even American, and I think she's a complete waste of time.
I've got to ask you, Liz was a deputy AG up in Illinois. This was her specialty. She made a pretty bold comment that the Biden administration, because of this policy at the border and allowing this invasion to take place, but she said it was strategic and they're complicit in basically assisting the greatest child sex, slavery, marketing, trafficking, whatever you want to call it, in the history of the country, maybe the history of the world. Do you agree with that thesis?
I do. I think it's actually worse than that. I think they've aided and abetted it and frankly encouraged it by their policies. It's as though they want these children to be imported and extorted and abused. That's exactly what's happening. They're completely responsible for it. They could stop it instantaneously if they enforced our existing law.
Okay, you're a former federal prosecutor. Take me through that. How do you, if the Biden administration wanted to do it, what is the ways that they have, you as a federal prosecutor, they could shut this down immediately?
Well, it's all being run by the Mexican drug cartels. They own all of the border on both sides, frankly. And that could be shut down by declaring them an international terrorist organization, which allows the government to affirmatively go after them in essentially a military operation. And it doesn't have to be just on this side of the border. It could be stopped in 2 weeks.
I'm from New Zealand, and I think even New Zealand has a serious problem. That Jacinda, Comrade Jacinda, we like to call her, my God, she's turning the country into a complete communist state with all of her rules and regulations and loss of human rights, all in the name of the scamdemic.
Behive, ready to roll again. And the swamp back here has not listened to us, does not listen to us, and will not listen to us. But we know that they know that we know they are a foreign corporation on the land of New Zealand. And yes, this is treason. We know that they know that we know they only govern by our consent, and we do not consent. And we know that they know that we know we are the many. We are the very, very few. And we have our lovely boys and girls in blue looking after us today. But maybe soon they will be weaponized. Maybe they will be against us. And we know that they probably don't know that they're working for a foreign corporation, and their works against us, if that day comes, is treason. And we know that they probably don't know that if whatever befalls us will befall them and their children and their parents and their grandparents. No one is going to get out of this deal if it goes through. And then of course we have the Marxist mainstream media, and we know, we know. And then of course it's us, woo! And we're here today because we know that we know that we know that we know we've got this in the bag. We have this. But we also know that we've got to start doubling down because the swamp dwellers back here have been learning this art for a long, long time. They take a page out of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Revolutionaries, Rules for Radicals. Number 10 is to squeeze and be hard and double down on the population. And number 11 is be hard with all the negativity. Just keep it pouring. Well, guess what? Back in your face, it goes. You're not going to let it happen.
Thank you for joining us here at the Statistical Giants. Don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe. We'll see you in the next podcast.